Hiya, this is Kitten Features, and you're listening to ShowX Live with Ken in the student accommodation all the way in Scotland. Wait, that was years ago. You're listening to ShowX Live with your favorite Scotsman Ken, currently residing in the US of A, and Wayne, mostly from Colorado, but spending way too much time in the Howling Abyss instead of Summoner's Rift. Enjoy the show!
Hey everybody, and welcome to the show. And apologies, if you will, to Ken, because I had him he created the graphics for today's show, and I got so wrapped up in getting everything going that I failed to change out last week's graphic to today's.
Oh, that's what you meant.
Yeah, no, I was sitting there like, as I turned on, so I was like, wait, this is not episode 451, but that's what the graphic says. That is completely my fault. And so that's an apology to Ken, because he took the time to put it up. So in all our advertising and stuff, you saw it, and the stuff for today's show. But then I totally flubbed it.
They know we did that last week. They know.
No, but it's the additional piece where I even specifically asked Ken, like, hey, could you put this as in 16:9 so that I could actually put it on the screen, kind of thing. And that was no, just saying, like, that's where I was like, dang it, I did that. So no, you're not going to let me get away with it. I'm going to, just because of that, I'm gonna make sure everybody gets to see your work. And so,
do you want to know what I used to make that graphic?
Oh, it's probably super simple.
Well, I missed Microsoft Paint, so I found a JavaScript version of Microsoft Paint from like Windows 98. It's called jspaint.app, and if you go to it, it looks exactly like the old school Microsoft Paint. Has all the same functionality. Really? I find it so easy to edit with. Yeah, I love it.
Okay, there you go.
So don't be too proud of that graphic.
Well, no, but that's to give people an idea of what we're doing today. And so that's what I wanted to make sure I threw in there. And so, oh wait, let's see. I think I actually do have one that I can work with that. Is it? Oh, I can do this one for myself.
Noob, Nintendo play.
It's funny because we use dropping so far in between that. Every time I hear them, I'm like, oh, I remember that.
Yeah, no, we don't use it often.
Years ago.
So anyhow, welcome to the show, everybody. You're listening to 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT on this Sunday, the 16th of August, 2020. Welcome to the show. Unfortunately, today, we do not have a Todd with us, but that is because he is taking today to be with friends and family to celebrate the Mistress of Giggles' birthday. So a very big shout out and happy birthday to Mistress of Giggles. And hopefully they are having a wonderful time celebrating sans us. And so that's why you are back to Ken and I this week. And so with that, Ken, how are you doing today, sir? How are things going?
And my gift to you, Mog, via Octale, is the fact that I am still here today because I'm moving apartment, which is why this is all like messy behind me, because I've been scraping that off the wall for like 4 hours. I do not recommend putting foam up with glue. It's not a good idea. Especially not in a rental apartment.
We were having a quick conversation before the show about it, saying like, you know, glue will work and it will absolutely get everything up there. But for like today,
yeah, it works. But so yeah, we don't recommend that. So instead, I'm here today, and instead of both me and Todd not being here, Wayne having to go solo, I would have felt particularly bad since we're now used to the three of us. Right, it wouldn't be fair on Wayne. So I made a point. I was like, nope, I will be there. I'll make it work. So here we are.
Appreciate that, Ken.
That's all right, and I to be honest, I need the break from running around and like I said, scraping that wall for 4 hours today already. So, although it gave me lots of audiobook progress. To be fair.
Oh yeah, no, I love having something else in the background while doing kind of continuous tasks, and so
it makes me feel so productive because then I'm like, oh, I'm both working on the wall and I'm making progress in my audiobook, and I can put that on Goodreads. Progress update 6% or something.
I need to get back to doing some more reads. I have been focusing on some shows and other things I've been doing that I haven't actually gotten to a book for a while, and I'm feeling like I still have all of the shorter books from Kyle Romines, that I grabbed when he was doing his digital sales on those
Nice.
and things. I still need to go through and read, and some other stuff like that. So yeah, I need to get back to some reading. I've been focusing on other things recently. But no, that's cool, and hopefully you'll get it done. Are you just
Sure.
moving like across like apartments in the same complex, or are you like moving somewhere completely new?
It's like two buildings down. It takes about a minute to walk between the two, so it's not going to be a hard move.
Oh yeah, I've helped people move
However,
like that.
it's slightly annoying because we don't have a car or anything. Not that we would use it anyway, but we can't really have like furniture being,
But
at
that's
least
the
even
challenge.
shipped part of the way there.
Yeah, no, that
So
sounds. I've helped a friend, used to be a roommate of mine, move between places in the same apartment like that, and in doing so, I had to, like, I still had my pickup back at the day, and I was able to like bring some of the bigger furniture directly over. So yeah, I understand.
yeah, super useful for that. So yeah, we're just gonna do the whole move tomorrow, and that's all. That's all that's really going on with us just now. That's pretty much life as is. Kitten is back back at home and is most welcome. I've missed her very much.
Very nice.
No longer living the sad bachelor life of playing video games all day, so that's good.
Oh no. Yeah,
No.
like my biggest
Yeah.
adjustment I had was coming out of being quarantine Wayne or lockdown Wayne, where I wasn't going to work, going back to my work schedule. One of the challenges was like, oh, it was really nice not having to wake up at any predetermined time and being able to just every morning grab a cup of tea, go sit on my porch and relax for a moment, sipping on it to kind of start the day. That I could try to do that still when I wake up at 5 a.m. to go to work, but it's a bit cooler out. And, at that point when I'm up, I just kind of want to get to work and get going. And oof. So
that's a good mindset you have, though, sir. I mean, I'm the same. I don't like, if I have work needing done, I hate like leaving it sitting there. I want to go do it. I want to go get over and done with. Like I don't want to sit there and be like, oh, I'll distract myself in the meantime. I'm like, no.
Part of it is I like to get in at a reasonably early time frame, because when I do, then I can turn around and leave at a reasonably early time frame, because I do 10-hour days at work, unlike many. And so for me, it's like, if I can get in there before 7 a.m, then I'm leaving before 5 p.m. And I like that, because for me, it gives me 3-day weekends every weekend. And that is my quality of life issue.
Priceless, dude. That's priceless.
For me, it's massive.
I agree.
But yeah, no, there's several things like that, as well as when I was on lockdown, Wayne, right? Being able to play video games kind of willy-nilly whenever, or spend some solid time on some, knowing that I've got 8 hours today. I can do various things besides the normal maintenance of house life and other things, as well as if I stay up a little later, it's not the end of the world, because I'll wake up tomorrow when I wake up, like not having an alarm necessarily set and such. Oh gosh. It's what reminds me that when I get to a point that I decide I'm ready to stop my regular everyday work schedule and, retire or whatever that means, I already know how I'm going to enjoy it. That's what I got out of lockdown, Wayne.
I think it's been really interesting. I saw a LinkedIn poll yesterday. Like somebody did a random poll where it was like, hit like if you think this, hit heart if you believe this, or whatever.
Yeah, those kind
equivalents are. Yeah. Anyway, so they did this poll, and it was if you could, after quarantine, if you've changed your views on working from home, would you prefer? And it said working 5 days from home a week, in other words, like always working from home, 4 days, 3 days, 2 days, 1 day, or none at all. Like, would you ever be in the office all the time? And interestingly enough, it was quite mixed. But the biggest one was with 35% or something was 3-day weeks. 3-day weeks is exactly what most people vote for.
I can absolutely see it. And well, I mean, we've had discussions about what a work week should look like. And I think if nothing else, what I hope people have gotten out around the world about lockdown has been what work is absolutely necessary to be done at a facility in a location that is being maintained as your workplace, versus you just need to be able to provide hours towards the effort. And so, like, my job's a little unique because we have secure information we work with, and therefore you have to be in. Yeah, you have to be in a secure facility to do that.
That is a bit different.
Well, but even then, we had a lot of entities who were able to find additional work around it, and it actually opened up their aperture significantly for how else they could still be effective while doing so. I was only minimized because my contract literally won't let me work outside of the facility I work at. Otherwise, I had work I could have found and done outside. So even I figured I could do like 3 and 2 pretty easily from here. And if I was doing a 3 and 2 day, I probably could do a 5-day work week, then, because I would split it up some and probably do like a, off Monday and Friday kind of thing, or from home Monday and Friday, and have all that flexibility and relaxation with it in being at my home environment while still being attached to the clock and doing work. Who knows?
Yeah,
but
working
I can
from
find
home is
ways.
an entirely different experience.
It is. And I know people
sure.
challenged with it because of things with having kids at home, stuff like that. But even with that challenge balance, I think there's a benefit to that, because a lot of parents' cost when they get into working, and both parents working, is childcare. And if they can find a means to work while still having the kids at home with them, they save a lot of that time and things like that, right? And so there's still so many things. But so anyways, it's a neat interaction. I hope the world comes to think about it more, because the idea that people need to work 40 hours a week is ridiculous to me.
Archaic.
Yeah.
It's archaic.
I forget where it started and came from, but there was a whole discussions I've seen about where even at least in the US and a lot of other countries, schooling is decided in a way that's kind of indoctrinates people into the idea of it. Go to school for 6 to 8 hours a day and then have to do like 2 to 3 hours of homework at night afterwards or something like that, versus creating a learning structure where you do it like 4 or 5 hours a day. It's all contained during the day, and the rest of your time is spent at home amongst your family. And if they could really change that across the board for what's the norm, so that you actually have more time at home with your family, actual productive time, wouldn't it? I would personally believe societies across anywhere adopting that would be better off. Just
for sure.
I'm lots of reasons to discuss that, but I think it would be. All of this to say outside of gaming and discussion like that, but yeah.
Sorry, I have one more thing. This is what we're saying. We always love to tangent too much. One more thing I have to say on the topic. Kitten has been working from home, obviously, as well, and she's been doing part-time work, right? And she went to go visit Iowa recently and hung out there. And but the cool thing is, because it's remote work and it's working and it's part-time as well, which makes it easier, there's no problem with traveling to another place and working from there. And that's the cool thing with remote work as well, is you don't actually need to be in the area. So like one of the jobs I applied for a year and a half ago or so was one based in Ipswich. And they said like they were willing to, like, I don't want to go into too much details, but they were willing, they really wanted me, right? They were like, they're really keen to have me, but they said, you have to move to Ipswich though. We have to have you on site. And I kept saying, you don't. I mean, I've basically worked with you guys for the past 4 years remotely. There's no need for me to be on site. And they said, it's just policy. You just have to be. It's just the way it is. And now with COVID, I've talked to these guys since then, and I'm like, so y'all working from home? They're like, yeah. I'm like, so you're all working remotely? Yeah. Is it affecting performance? No. Right. We both experienced this, right? The cool thing is that you can actually go on holidays effectively while still working. How cool is that? That's
and I've known people who've done that, right? That they're like, in order to, like, my brother's family, stuff like that on the West Coast, they've done things where work still got accomplished while they were literally on vacation, because they at least had, there were things they could do to manage it, to say, I need to provide 2 hours today of dedicated work towards the job to get some things done that are time sensitive. And then I've got the rest of the day to spend with family. And so they could balance what it meant to take a vacation versus, we can take 2 days over the weekend, maybe a third. And they were able to go for like a week because they were able to have that flexibility. It's like, some work was being done, but for the most part, it was still vacation. And it allowed the whole family to get out and do that. And I do want to say that while we're bringing up this whole work-life kind of situation, I understand Ionis, Earthweaver, and those in the chat talking about, I can't do that some jobs require people to be in there. But I do argue in a lot of those cases, like an extreme example, one of the things I've supported in the past has a 24/7 type of operation. There is somebody in a seat doing an activity 24 hours a day, every day of the week. But to manage that right now, they do 4 crews, and those 4 crews work 12-hour shifts that rotate, basically, so that it's always covered. My argument is, if we could find a more productive way to do, like, it's the type of jobs you do, but normalize other things, wouldn't it be great to instead shift that into a true, add more shifts and more people? And yes, that's paying more cost on it, but giving people 8-hour work shifts on those same kind of days and split into 3 shifts. And I think it would just create such a better quality of life for people, because the 12-hour shifts, when I was working those, you'd work 12 hours, you'd go home, you'd eat, you'd do what you had to do, like triage, pass out, get up the next day, triage, and go to work. And so for whatever days you were working, that's all you did. There was nothing else outside it. And so like where Earthweaver's saying he's doing like 60-hour weeks working various things, even if there are cases where the number of hours becomes higher in some of the salary jobs things out there, if we still normalize the amount of time attached to activities, I think you could find reductions, because unfortunately a lot of businesses build their schedule around the idea of a person sitting in a space for 40 hours. And I would say the majority of businesses, at least that concept encapsulates how they divvy up work and stuff. And we've seen study after study that says in an 8-hour workday, 5 days a week, how much time is actually productively doing something? Even if it is chatting, talking, workboarding something or whatever, writing up memos, emails, whatever the work is, they have found that in the majority of jobs, and there's exceptions to every rule, but the majority of jobs where people are required to sit there for 40 hours a week, there's like 20 hours of productivity that actually happens in that time. The other 20 hours are, name it, from going to get coffee, using the restroom, to, you know, just various activities that when you really sit down and decide aren't work.
There's a reason there's a culture of, well, I only poop when I'm paid to poop, right?
Yeah. Let's see.
Because
I won't deny the idea that, wow, I got up today, I could go use the washroom now, or I could just suck it up for another 15, 20 minutes, get things done, go to work, and do it when I get to work, because now I've clocked in. And that additional,
it's not even about like the choice. It's just that's when you have your coffee. You have your morning coffee at work, and then you're
it's just like that does become a real thing. Or like, well, when I get home, I may need to use the washroom, or I can just go ahead and use it now, and then it'll only be like 10 more minutes. I got to leave to go home. And so that is an absolute like thing people think about. Anyhow, so that's all us welcoming you guys to the show. Do want to say that today we're going to be talking about, as our main topic, the continuation of the previous discussions we've been having about ways of gaming. And last week we were talking a little bit more about the future consoles coming out. This week we touched on it last week about what other options may be there for gaming. And in this case, we're going to focus on cloud gaming or streaming gaming is what we're going to talk about today. Before we do that, we are going to get into a little bit of cleanup. We have an email that came to us from our friend Shadowvice, who wanted to talk about our subject a couple weeks back that was specifically about story versus game. And we saved this one because there was a bit of a wall of text to this. It would have been better if Todd was here too, because Todd knows Shadowvice very well as well, mutual friend of ours. But I didn't want this to go any later, so I wanted to make sure I brought this up. All right, everybody. After that, I think also we're going to try to make sure we have time to talk a little bit about the 1.0 release of Factorio, since it is no longer in a pre-release mode. It just hit in the last, day or two officially? Like I actually started it up, I think yesterday. I started up yesterday and did the update, and it's like 1.0. And admittedly, I started an old game that I haven't touched for a while and just kind of looked around. I was like, nothing looks different yet, but I mean, I should probably go back and start a new game and go through the whole process. No, so I'll look forward to hearing from you, Ken, about what it means for it to be in 1.0 so that even I can learn. All right. But with that, before we get into our cleanup and stuff like that, thank you, Ken, for catching us up. Anything else you wanted to share with everyone to start today?
No, that's everything I can think of. Cool. Send us in emails as well. If you want to be mentioned in your emails, you can certainly send us in anything you want us to discuss and think about to VtWShowX@gmail.com. We don't use the old VTW Productions one. It's VtWShowX@gmail.com. Absolutely.
And then for me, on the, I guess, outside of work things, I've had little projects going on still where various states of trying to refix and do stuff with 3D printers. Of course, that new quad I have is a constant work in progress. I had a piece of it get destroyed or kind of mess up and get clogged, and I found someone in the community to order new pieces from, got that in, put together, and it's still mucking up a bit. So I have work to do there, some projects like that. Otherwise, what was my big thing? I'm still babying my hamstring injury. It sucks because for anyone who's had that, this is my first, and what's terrible about it is it doesn't feel like an injury the majority of my time. unless I actually try to use it. And so walking around, doing everything
well, that's a good
normal,
thing, though, I guess. You say it
yeah,
sucks.
yeah, it means I'm
that
not.
sounds like a
No.
big win.
I'm not crippled, which is wonderful. The problem is, it means I feel like I should be able to go run. And the problem is, if I do that, very quickly, it reminds me that, nope, I'm still here. And when it reminds me, that also means it injures itself again and will take even further and longer to heal. So I did take a time last week. I was able to get in on a day where I was at work, and thankfully work is flexible enough that I was able to run into a physical therapist and have them like look at me. And it's funny because the gal who looked at me laughed at me. Then I discussed how I went about injuring it and injuring it again and injuring it again, because I didn't really know what the injury was and I wasn't sure what was supposed to be done. So I was like, well, I stretched and like rested it for a day or two, put some ice on it. I should be good now, right? It doesn't hurt. And apparently less than a week of care is not enough to fix a hamstring injury. And the more I researched and talked to others, that apparently it can take as much as 4 to 6 months. So, yeah.
Dude, hamstrings are big, thick muscles. That's not a big surprise to me. I mean, of all the muscles in your body that takes time to heal, that's probably the biggest one, right?
It is a decent one. I mean, thank God it wasn't like pulling or destroying my glute or something. Right, because that would be rough. But no, it's something that, and I know, like Earthweaver, I know you appreciate it, right? And things like that just it's just that it's one of those teased injuries. Like, it's one thing when you injure something, it's broken, and every time you touch it, it hurts. It lets you know, oh yes, this sucks. But this one, because it's like a hidden injury, I have to just respect it. And I've been doing and the PT gave me exercises to very specifically focus on, and I'm being a good little patient and doing my exercise. The one thing that I've been pushing is going to yoga, because I had just started a yoga membership, and in order to make it worthwhile, I need to go at least twice a week, if not 3 times. The beauty is,
you know what's not worth your while? You know what's not worth your while? Having to pay copays for surgeons, physical therapists, or whatever the hell to fix your leg because you decided to, go and do yoga.
The beauty is yoga is not an impact activity, and so it has not aggravated my hammy, and that's the key. Is like it is
so long as you're sure.
No, it's along the lines of the PT. It actually follows along to a degree. Like, the only day it aggravated a little bit was when I tried to go to yoga 2 days after re-injuring it. And it was just in a couple transitions that it was like, hey, remember me? But I went the other day, and I went Friday morning, and it was fine. And I was very aware and watching it. And so it was great. So the nice thing is, yoga is such a good core exercise and stretching that I want to be able to at least keep doing that. And it looks like I can while I'm doing the rest. But I have to go 2 weeks of solid PT, and then I should be able to test to see if I can walk vigorously for 30 minutes straight. Then I'll be on a next stage of recovery, and then another couple weeks of that and pushing that a little for, I should be able to transition into a walk run, like walk for a minute, run for a minute, or jog for a minute, walk for a minute, jog for a minute, according to the physical therapist. And once I get through that, I should start to be able to progress to a longer continuous jog again. So I have a plan. We'll see how it goes. But that's been one thing I've been really working on of late to try to that's a real thing. Other than that, gaming wise, I continue to play various games. I'm happy because in the VTW Discord, we have a newer member, Azur Lily, who I was thanking her for joining us in our server recently. She's like, what? That was random. But it was because
I hung out with her last week, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because for me, it was because of the game she plays. There's so many people that I hang out with in our Discord focus on 1 or 2 games. Maybe a lot of them, 1 game is what they play on multiplayer with others. Azur Lily plays we were able to flip just the other day, a couple days ago, through Overwatch, Call of Duty, Warzone. We're doing actually team deathmatch for the most part. And ARAMs and League of Legends. We played all 3 of those games together. And I was like,
that's
hey, well, isn't it nice to have someone who has a more diverse catalog of gaming? I appreciate that. Because so many, it's like, oh, you're on, I can play this with you. Oh, you're on, I can play this with you, right? She and I were able to jump between games because we were doing one. It was like, this is hurting so bad. Let's go try Overwatch next. Oh, hey, that was fun for a bit. Oh, let's now go. I want to do an A round before I finish gaming today. Oh, I'll do that with you.
Nice.
Like, that was awesome. And I may or may not have like convinced her to like me, spend money on new Microsoft Flight Sim that's coming out on Tuesday this week. Because
that makes sense for her job, yeah.
Well, it's not just her job; it's her activity where she's getting a pilot license, right? And for me, it was somewhat. I wanted someone to compare it with, to be like, teach me things, because I don't fly.
Yeah, that'll be a unique experience, I imagine, playing Flight Sim with somebody who actually like flies.
Well, and I've watched several streams of people who were sharing, pre-builds or people that have had it access. It was like 4 real pilots did this thing together, multiplayer, and they were showing off the multiplayer, which looks solid. And they're all in these little, like bush planes, real low. They don't need much speed to take off and land, and short distance lands. Big bubble tire type little single seat or 2-seaters. And they all did like as a multiplayer thing, like, hey, we're flying along together in this little middle of nowhere. Look at this river. Look, there's a little sandbar kind of little thing in the middle of the river. Do you think we could land there? And like, let's give it a shot. And the first guy goes in, lands. He's like, I did it. And the next one's like, okay. And they eventually, all 4 of them were able to land on this little thing together. And they were like watching each other land. It was fun to watch her. They're like, hey, here's how I did it. And it was just really fun for me to hear them share that. And I was like, that's some of the silliness in a simulation engine that I appreciate, of where we talked before about simulation versus game, where they created their own mini game within that simulation engine of, here's a challenge. Can we, using the physics of this game, accomplish this task? And did. And I was like, see, I would totally do that stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. I wonder how similar these kind of sims are now for a pilot, right? Somebody who actually knows, like, maybe somebody who's flown for years, right? Somebody with like 10,000, like, I don't know, that's a thing, 5,000 hours of flight hours or something. I wonder what it's like for them,
And that's where I was interested in watching the pilots do. And in some of the commentary, they're just like, yeah, most of the stuff I heard was, this is darn accurate. I remember, at least at some point in the past of the Microsoft Flight Sim history, there was a time where you could submit your digital logs of a flight to whatever aviation board, and it would count as legit simulation cockpit time. That you could help reduce. Yeah, you could help reduce your actual required hours of flight before you could get in and actually fly your plane, or it would count towards certification stuff. You just had to submit basically your black box or your flight log from the game, from the simulation.
That's smart, actually, because that'll make sure you're doing something legitimate as well, not just screwing around.
Well, yeah, and it's why a lot of pilots would use it. Like for me, the one time I did it, probably one time, that I flew in a way that wasn't just mucking about, was I preemptively flew a route in the same essentially plane I was going to be riding on when I had a personal flight down to Albuquerque one time. Fairly short flight, all of like maybe an hour in the air kind of thing, hour or 2 in the air. But it was wonderful for me to like taxi out from DIA, do the whole thing, take off, fly essentially the route down. And as I did, I was looking virtually around the landscape at various markers and things that I found like, oh, I can from the plane see this thing that's distinct about this long into the flight. And I do it on both sides of the plane because I wasn't sure where I was sitting. And then when the flight actually occurred, I did the same thing. I was looking out the window like, hey, there's the thing I flew by and was trying to note. And this thing. And so it was neat for me to have references from the digital flight back into real life and compare the two.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I want to do things like that, let alone if I can ever fly, whenever we can travel more comfortably by plane around again. Now with the new flight sim, the graphics they're incorporating and the fact that they're tying into their Bing service for mapping and using photogrammetry to fill in everything. Features. The ability to actually literally like find your house kind of concept, whether it looks exactly like it or not, but find your house is way more real in this version of Flight Sim than has ever been. So one of the first things I will likely do when it comes out Tuesday morning, essentially, or Tuesday available, is fly down and find my house. That it's just like, yep, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm looking forward to that a lot. It looks gorgeous. I'll be curious to see how it plays. Anyhow, so that's what I've been doing on gaming. That's what it is. Time for us to do a cleanup email because this one is a bit of a wall of text. So I want to get to this, and then we'll get into our main topic today. So thanks to everyone for joining. Feel free, please, now that you're watching, share us out on wherever you're watching us so that friends can follow us as well, and we'd love to have this conversation with you. All right. So this coming to us saying story versus game. This coming from Shadowvice. And it says, so I was planning to write a full essay to support my theory that would be composed of cited sources, first-person accounts, full-on documentaries, and utilizing the talented voiceover work of Gilbert Gottfried. It was going to be fire, and people would respect me for my ingenuity in the field. Then I remembered how long I've been trying to type this, and I shortened it up a bit. I'll drop interested resources to consider after my response. Here's the deal. I'm inspired by a rocket scientist that I know that once said that terms are important before having discussions. So in order to lay this out, we have to understand a few key terms. Story, concept, purpose, game mechanic, storytelling, grubstake. It doesn't really have any purpose, but it comes with a loan. Okay, story. This very important term can be understood as a fictional or non-fictional retelling of an event. More importantly, it is the universal set of the issue. Without the story, there is no game. There is no reason to play a game and no reason to come together. Now, the story can be simply be game player A and game player B coming together to play tic-tac-toe. They could play the game for purposes of exploring game theory or mechanics, or just to play a game where neither would win. But then playing the game was after the story of two people coming together. Some examples in context of this conversation. Agile story, where a user or users come together to describe a functionality of some sort. A tale around a fire. People are brought in to talk about a story. Battlestar Galactica 1978, The Young Lords, where Starbuck tells a story to start a quest to free their father from the Cyclones. Points to remember. You could say that this is a concept. Concept is derived from a story that developed a need for a concept in the first place. You could say that this is history. Well, history is just non-fictional retelling of a story. It literally has the word story in it. His story, yeah. You could say that it is the purpose. Actually. Yeah, it's just like, I never thought of that. Yikes.
Yeah, it's weird when you get told like a word that you know really well is actually something really, yeah. For example, I once realized the word news is just the plural of the word new. And that blew my mind like 10 years ago. And I was like, no way. That's so stupid. There's just a bunch of new things, a bunch of news. It's just
right.
It makes English feel really dumb suddenly.
Well, okay, you say that, and yet I will discuss that from many other languages. One of the primary ones, because it's one I focus and study a lot, and trying to study on occasion, and have been around it a lot. Japanese. There's so many things that get used, especially like martial arts, other things around Japanese, where it's like, do this attack, right? And it's called a shuto or something like that. When you actually go back and just translate it, it's literally like hand, so it's not like the actual attack. It's
you're
like
wow, there's some ancient technique that I'm learning.
Yeah, it's cool the tool that you're using, right? Well, one of the ones that recently came to me, and that was in the ninjutsu arts, they traditionally look at the first part of training as the first 9 levels that you learn, 9 levels you train at as your introductory things. And for us, it's like, the cues. You're training the cue level techniques. Q means 9, and so it was like,
oh yeah, you're like, dang it! I'm just saying that again.
Yeah, it is literally like just the word, and it happens all the time. But it's interesting. What is it? What's that called when you study the history of words?
Etymology.
Okay, I was right, because I was like, it sounds in my mind it's etymology, but I was starting to, whenever I said it in my mind, I was thinking of
question yourself. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking of the appetizer you'll get. That's the beans, which is it starts with an E also. That's why it kept messing me up. Edamame. I was thinking I kept in my head hearing edamame versus.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, anyways. I got you. It's funny how
Total
brains work.
asides.
Like that'll be a neuron in your brain that was stored, like that memory was stored next to the word etymology because your brain deemed them similar in some respect. Probably just from the way they sound, obviously.
That's it. Whatever it was,
it's funny
yeah.
now that you recall it, you recall the one next to it or something by mistake.
Yeah, it's just enough where I was like, man, there's something that I'm missing here. Something about that I need to like figure out correctly. Okay, to continue the email, now we got past the whole off topic of history. You could say that this is the purpose. Well, this is similar to the concept in that the purpose was developed from and an action of the very story that developed this purpose. So those are his points to remember. All right, game, his definition. However one could put this, it is simply a form of play. It doesn't have to be competitive, although it mostly is. It can be an exercise, a win-lose scenario, or a meditative form of relaxation or focus. Game mechanic. This is an element that exists that helps describe how to understand the game or play it. Storytelling. This is one of the many mechanisms that can exist, but doesn't need to be considered a game. Back to paragraph. See, the ultimate conversation about why story is important is because it describes why a person or people are choosing to come together in a gameplay. It is the very essence, the very quality of why we play games. Without story, we wouldn't have, was it Noruk's elbow, Hordak losing to StarCraft after literally tying his primary hand behind his back. This is Game Fest people from the past. Or any of the events that are shared at the numerous Game Fests that have come before. When we heard about a fantasy MMORPG based off of Warcraft, we jumped on because our friends filled our ears with stories of epic fantasy adventure. It wasn't because the math is cool. Definitely not that hashtag druids are still badass. It's why we continue to play today. It has points to consider, and in this he shares what Jane McGonigal website, books Reality is Broken and Super Better, as a couple video links that are TED Talks from Jane McGonigal about gaming can make a better world and the game that can give you 10 extra years of life. Interesting. And a TED Talk from Ali Shellman saying gaming to re-engage boys in learning and other gaming stuff online.
Yep.
And so links that I will provide in the show notes. So thank you very much for that email in there, Shadowvice. Appreciated. And it's interesting because I'm still personally on the fence around it about the necessity of story to a game. But like I say,
that's certainly still an opinion, right? Like that he thinks the story is absolutely required, and a few other people do. That's still all opinion, though, right? It's not an objective definitive, is it? It's not an a priori. It's still just somebody's opinion. And I think that just because games can generate stories, you could argue that maths is only about stories and what eventually it can do and the people who did it and such. You can argue anything's about a story because story just means a historical moment, right?
You could tell a story about any event, right? But I don't think every event requires a story. And so with that in mind, I will say there are games I play not because of the story involved, even if there is a story. I say that about League of Legends all the time. That I don't play because of the story of the Rift, right? Or why these characters are fighting each other. I play solely for the gameplay mechanic, especially in ARAMs, of going, 5 of us need to go blow up their base against the 5 of them and stop them from doing it to us.
So
and that's not
playing
for me.
The maths is cool.
I'm playing because of how you apply the maths based on your skill of interpreting the scene and a scene of all other live people using those maths against each other or in concert with each other to do it. So for me, it's the joy of applying the maths without thinking about the maths.
Yeah, I know that Octale was big on saying that it's all about the maths, right, and analyzing the maths. I mean, like, just because the game is built on maths doesn't mean it's a simulation, right? For our senses. And whether our brain calculates maths at some sub level whenever we're thinking about movement and such, or tactics or anything, I don't know, and I'm not going to try and pretend I do. But I'm going to say instead that it's more the fact that it's a simulation we can attribute to something in real life, like movement and tactics and such, rather than actually being.
I think they all inform each other and they all play off of each other. So for me, there's a bit of balance across the board as they all provide elements of what allows you to either enjoy or do something specific in it. So for me, the maths are what you're trying to apply to do something. But the problem is your skill in applying them may determine which maths you want to focus on. And if you're reacting to a situation, which maths you want to apply. And the challenge I have is maybe I'm just not skilled enough to do everything down to the core math. But it's in a situation like for me, an ARAM game. I have seen a Vigar get an AP score of over 1,000, which is impressive. Yep. But in doing so, they're essentially a glass cannon. And so while they're a very big cannon, once you realize from the other perspective they're against you or something that they are the threat because they do such big burst damage, you just take your whole team and with the fear of perhaps getting picked off by other players on the team, you destroy them first and then continue with the rest of the team so that now it's a 4v5 or something like that. And because they're such a glass cannon, it's really easy to melt them quick. And so there's a point there that maybe the person should have played less pure aggressive and focused a little more on a balanced play. And that's where it goes beyond, for me, math. And it becomes just more the abstraction of the math into the situational awareness and how you play, let alone your own application of skill, right? Yeah. And so it expands beyond. So that's why for me, I've never been hard maths. And when I think hard maths, I usually think from an Octail or a Todd perspective, min-maxing of how can I maximize the effect for the minimizing of resource involved in doing so. And that's awesome for people, especially when you're being competitive and your goal is to win at a competitive level. And so you're willing to put that extra level of commitment, effort, and time in to do that. For me, most games are, I want to put enough effort in to enjoy the experience I'm having, where my entire enjoyment isn't strictly about climbing a leaderboard and winning at a top tier, because my stake is not winning money or being able to call out that I am the best in the region or world or whatever. It is my skill and enjoyment can be, I won that match, or I did better this match than this many other people, like Call of Duty Warzone. Yes, getting a W is wonderful, but if I get in the top 10, I feel pretty good, right? Or even in microbursts, and this is where, again, my thing is, we decided to be silly this round and change the point of the game and say, we're going to drop in this hot location where probably a dozen other teams are dropping. If we survive this, we in a way won, because we knew we were putting ourselves at mass risk, things like that. So I think across the board, all these things have variety. And I think every individual out there, and one of the beautiful things about gaming, has something they enjoy. And it could be completely different than what other people enjoy. And so it's why there's games I just don't play.
Yeah, for sure, right? There's loads of games that I don't go near because it's just not for me, but other people love, right? That's pretty common. I think everybody's experienced friends and colleagues and family who will play different types of games. Like, for example, my wife loves playing Skyrim. She adores Skyrim. She loves The Sims as well. But the idea of playing League of Legends to her would be like, she would probably rather take a bath in battery acid. Like she think, well, it's probably less toxic than League of Legends can be anyway. Hey, but but yeah, it's just different types of games, different people, right?
Yep, absolutely. So thank you very much, Shadowvice, for bringing in your perspectives about story and why for you it is a key element to any game that's being played. And like I said, I appreciate your opinion, your perspective on that. And I'm glad that we can all have our own reasons for playing. So, boom. Everybody go with that. We got you caught up, and we've done our emails. If you have any perspectives on anything we talked about in the past or anything you hear us talk about on the show today, please share as well to VtWShowX@gmail.com, because this is the kind of conversation we want to have, hearing what you guys think as well. All right.
Yeah.
With that, we are going to now transition over into our main topic today to specifically talk about other ways to game. So, Ken, if you would do us the favor, we're going to kick things off by telling you guys what cloud gaming is. And then we'll get into some of the things about it and why it may or may not be something to look forward to. Ken, what is cloud gaming?
Sure.
What is streaming a game?
So yeah, I think it would be advertised. Let's talk about what they claim it is first, right? So it'll often be advertised as the Netflix of gaming, right? That's what these things are often advertised as, because Netflix is such a successful adaptation of TV, right? It's the idea that anything's instant access. You can watch whatever you want straight away. Huge library of stuff, and you can also explore new things you hadn't seen before. And it streams in high quality, right? Generally speaking, I think most people there are people who can listen to the show via video and streaming can therefore also watch Netflix, right? Because they'll have big servers just like Twitch, right? So the majority of people out there who have internet connection can probably watch Netflix on at least standard quality, but I'd say most these days are HD, especially in the US and Western countries and European countries.
Well, now, so with that, when you say the Netflix of gaming, essentially the idea is paying a monthly fee for access to a streamed experience that is gaming.
Yes,
in basic
form. And by that's what's advertised as, right? And I say that very specifically because I don't necessarily agree with it. Because streaming something in one direction is a lot easier than in two directions, right? Because with Netflix, you just say, I would like to watch this to a server, and the server says, okie doke. It keeps an eye out for if you hit pause.
Well, let's get into some of the challenges of it here in a second. So another kind of discussion point of just describing it, and this comes from the article you shared with me, Ken, from Digital Trends, says, a relatively new addition to the gaming industry, game streaming services give players remote access to some of the best titles in the market. Each service works a bit differently than the next, but in essence, these services allow users to stream video games to their screens in a manner similar to a Netflix or Hulu. That means you won't need a fancy PC or lots of storage space on your console. Instead, you just need a stable internet connection. So that's what they're being described as, essentially, right? Is that what you're doing is you're paying a fee for access to cloud-based resources. For those people who don't understand or hear the term and buzz kind of concept of cloud, essentially what you're paying access to in a cloud is a group of server-grade hardware that exists at some site around the country, often in these kind of situations, distributed levels of this where you have multiple sites geographically separated so that they give you low latency to each one from wherever you are. And what you're doing is you are paying for access to some level of that hardware, usually CPU resources, video card resources for this gaming system, hard drive and RAM setups that they maintain and do all the workload on the server. And what they send to you is just a stream of the results, the audio and video output from what they're providing. And so basically a virtual access to a console or a PC or some kind of experience like that, where you're just seeing it show up on your device like Netflix or Hulu, where it's just streaming that signal to you. What you're providing back that Ken said was it's then taking on your end the inputs that you would do from either a controller, keyboard, mouse, or whatever your input back to it is to inform that server what to do next, to basically provide that input feature back. Is what it's doing. And so that is essentially what cloud gaming is. Now, how it's executed, I think, is where you start getting into some of the nuances, plus and minuses, and where does it or doesn't work, and what do you get for this? So with that, I know there's some kind of, the challenge is no one cloud serving service is the same. They all have their plus and minuses. Some of the main ones I have seen out there, and Ken, please fill in more as things you're aware of, but there's variations from the one I know we'll talk about that had both experience with was Stadia from Google, GeForce Now from NVIDIA, Shadow PC, which is kind of a greater, bigger concept, but applies as well from, I believe, is Blade, yep. PlayStation Now from Sony, and I know there's others beyond that, because I think in various articles I looked at, there's other ones that get discussed beyond those ones, but those are some of the main ones I saw. I know Xbox Cloud is one, but it's currently, I think, still in beta, although it's a free beta right now. You can sign up for if you want to check it out. Really, as well as there's some smaller right now in beta, but it will be a cost once it's out of beta. So that's the one where, like,
sure, I'm just surprised it's free at all. That's kind of crazy.
Well, just in the beta. Well, so I remember, and here's the thing: there was a game streaming service. This isn't a new concept. The first one I did was, I think, called On Play or On Now. Mm-hmm. Was a old game streaming service that I actually used way back when. And it worked. And it worked okay. And you could play it across multiple types. I played it on my Xbox. I played it on PC. And it worked. And yet it died and went away. Because I think the model of how they were playing it was actually a real slick one. Because the way they did it, and gosh, I wish I still had a way to show what it was. It it would load up to a virtual desktop that looked like a very customized interface that just had the handful of games it supported. At the time when it came out, it maybe was a dozen or so games. But what's slick is whatever you paid for the service fee on it, you got access to all those games. All dozen, not a ton, but all of them. While you were playing it, before you chose the game, you could just go into one of the games. And what it also did, and what they were trying to tie into, is it ran a stream of other people playing the game. And so before you even played it, you could just see, and it would grid out to like these multiple blocks that you could just kind of scroll through, and it would show you like these real-time streams of people gaming. And you could just click on it, and it would just bring it to full screen, and now you're watching that person play. And it was like, this is such a neat, slick concept. And I'm sure like most of these services, it's just their overall monetary system didn't work out. Like the long-term translating what they're asking for their costs, server costs, game license costs, streaming costs, things like that just didn't match up.
I think especially if that's one of the first ones, I imagine the license fees would have been ridiculous.
Years ago. I was testing this out. I swear it was like 6 or 7 years ago that I played with it. Maybe it was 5-ish, I don't know, but I played with it. It worked. I just had the same challenge there where I had invested in so much myself. I wasn't the target audience. And at the same time, it suffered from the same necessity of what you need today, which is that stable internet connection. And back then, I was of the unique side that I'd always paid for pretty robust internet, and a lot of people weren't.
Yeah.
But I do remember on that service, I think, I forget what I played. I played a couple, like one of the older Sam Fisher games. I'm pretty sure I played on it. And it was streaming at, I think, 720p and 30 frames per second. And it looked good, and I played it. So yeah, anyhow. So it's not a new concept. All right, so to get into this, though, let's see, where should we start? Should it be cost, performance, stuff like that? Because I want to say, how much more of the stage should we set?
Well, let's discuss. Let's first of all mention what we've actually tried loosely, and then we can go more in depth as we go through the other discussions. But let's just at least mention which ones we've tried, so everybody knows where we're coming from. So, if you don't mind me going first, the first one I ever played was actually a few months ago on PlayStation, because I was just scrolling through my library. I noticed that they had an ad as one of the buttons in the library, which I always hate. Yeah, I hate that stuff. PlayStation 4, yeah. And they said, yeah, hey, PlayStation Now, it's you get a month free trial. Or I think it was only a week. You get a week free trial, but you get access to, any game that's on PlayStation pretty much entirely.
Yes, their entire
straight away
Stream library, which currently exists at 800 titles.
And my mouth kind of watered. I was like, whoa, that's a big library. And there's a lot of games like Red Dead Redemption and stuff that I really wanted to play. So I was like, yeah, let's try this out. I mean, I don't know much about it, but I'm willing to give it a shot. So hopped on. I signed up for the free trial. Of course, it's very easy because they want people not to, back out when they think about it. So you click OK, and it's like, all right, you're in. So the first thing I did is download a couple of simple games, and they're like some of sort of like indie games that are like 200 meg, nothing big. I noticed two features that I really liked. One was you could either stream directly and just play now, or you could pre-download parts of it so that they wouldn't have to download, so they wouldn't have to stream constantly. So it was almost like a loan service mixed in with the streaming service, which I thought was a really smart move, especially for people who are, on not the best internet connection, which is going to be the biggest problem with game streaming services, right? And the fact that you have an option of either or is even better. The one thing that I find quite annoying about this service was that obviously you need a PlayStation. So you've already paid for the hardware.
Well, you don't. You need a PlayStation or a PC.
For the PlayStation Now?
Yes, you can do it on PC as well.
Can you? I didn't know you could do PlayStation Now on PC.
Yes, you can. It started on PlayStation only, but now you can do it on PlayStation or PC.
That's pretty slick. Okay, I'm pretty sold on that idea. Because that was going to be my thing, is why would you spend $1,000 on a new PlayStation? Well, what was a new PlayStation? In order to rent everything. It seems a bit silly when you could just purchase the game and have it forever. But that's real slick. Wow. That's kind of changed my views slightly. Well,
it's something. I want to be honest with each thing to give people like a full understanding of what it is these things offer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so with PlayStation Now specifically, that's the thing. It does actually allow you to game on PC and on PlayStation. it has plus and minuses like all of them, and I'm sharing their site right here that you can look at, because PlayStation Now is a specific one, costs $10 a month. And with it, you get the full access to all of their game library that they're doing. And so basically up to 800 games. Now, with that in mind, specific to this one, some of the challenges of the PlayStation Now service is that it is limited to just PC and PlayStation 4. It doesn't work on mobile, which is that is a service thing that some others do have an example of, but is one of the limitations or not a feature within PlayStation Now. It also has a limit where it only streams it up to 720p at 60 hertz. And for some, that could be, at least it's an awareness thing, right? That is something that you have to pay attention to, whereas others will, every other service I'll bring up does more. It lets you play at a higher rate. But yes, the nice thing about
that's pretty big, right? I mean, I think the resolution these days, again, I'm speaking from, maybe this is a bit classist of me, but I think most people at least have a full HD TV these days. But
it is difficult to buy.
Large number has 4K.
It is a difficult thing to buy a 720p set today that's smaller than, or it has anything bigger than basically a 42 inch or something is pretty much going to be 1080p now. So yes, but even then, to understand that 720p is, there's a fun fact. If you have a current generation console, you are likely only playing in some level of resolution below 1080p. And I know that crushes console players, but be aware, most consoles play at some slight derivative below in order to maintain performance at a stable frame rate. And some of them, if you look back on the jacket, will play as low as 720p. And there's a handful that will even go lower than that because they're such action things. So it's amazing how many games don't actually play in full 1080p. With that though, and I'll also make note that on their page is $10 a month basically, but if you buy it per year, it's $60 a year. So it's a little less than $9 a month essentially for their service. Good. So not bad. So if you have access to a low power PC that has a stable internet connection, or any generation from the PS3 and up, I believe, you can use the PlayStation Now service.
So how does the PlayStation Now service work on PC with different controllers? Like, do you need to have a PlayStation controller, or can you use your mouse and keyboard?
So that one, I'll have to double check. Most of the services you can actually on PC use any controller to a degree. Some of them do support keyboard mouse, some don't. I don't think PlayStation supports keyboard mouse at all. I'm pretty sure
I think actual PlayStation do, because I played Fortnite on my PlayStation with keyboard mouse.
Actual PlayStations do, but I think PlayStation Now service is designed around the controller, I think. All right. So,
I think so as well. Okay,
that's one that you experienced and you're aware of. So another one that we'll talk about, I'll share as we talk.
I have one more question on that, which was since I saw that you could partially pre-download certain games on the PlayStation, that makes sense because your PlayStation will be able to run them. But if you're on a Chromebook or some really crappy notebook or something that was like $50, right, and you use game streaming service, which will does that mean it's all still going to be? It has to all be handled on the server with the PC version, then, right?
Yep. So here's the key: if you have a device that can show Netflix, you can use a streaming service.
Yes.
For gaming, essentially.
But I figured that if you can pre-download some of it on PlayStation, that means that you also are probably going to process some on PlayStation, right?
On a PlayStation, yes.
That's kind of my question is if the two are the same service, there is a slight difference between the two then, I guess.
Well, it could be, right? And that's the thing. So, but if you're streaming, I think the streaming is the default, where it has that option on PlayStation if it's one of the games you would have played on your PlayStation anyways. And as long as you're paying for the service, you still get access to the game. So that's just one of the hybrid things they do with PlayStation Now that honestly I don't think any of the other services do. That's with it. All right. So anything else we want to say about the about this one specifically?
Yeah, I'd like to discuss my actual experience with it.
Yeah, go for it.
So both me and Kitten tried this out. So we got access, and we had a couple, like I said, a couple indie games downloaded. There were a few hundred meg, nothing crazy. And we also tried streaming directly. And the streaming directly worked mostly fine. Probably because, like you said, they already have all these gimmicks in place to reduce quality as need be, with internet connection as well as on the actual console, I imagine. So it worked okay. It wasn't great. Like there's a couple times I was like, all right, the sound's going a bit iffy, or the graphics are going off, and the controls were sometimes a little bit slow. So I certainly wouldn't be playing an FPS on it with my internet connection. And by the way, I'm living on effectively on campus at a huge university, so I should have a pretty good internet connection. It's not the best. It's not Wayne's, but it's pretty good. So that was a little disappointing. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say is that we tried it. The catalog games was really impressive. We were really impressed by the catalog. That's awesome, right? Putting $10 down a month is quite a lot of money, but if you think about how much you spend on games anyway, instead of spending, $60, $70, $80 on a new AAA title, you can have instant access for $10 a month, and everyone. I mean, if you can truly say that your yearly budget on games is less than $120 or wherever the current deal is, right, for a year, then it is, generally speaking, if you have a good internet connection, much more worthwhile to get this service just for that fact alone, because you're saving money then. So that's what I'll say for that. Okay. I've said one. Sir, do you want to say one as well, and then we can maybe go back into my next one as well?
Okay, so there's several to talk about. One of the ones that we can talk about also is the GeForce Now service.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
This one from NVIDIA. And essentially, it's similar. It's designed really to be around your PC was the primary, although I believe, and I had to double check my notes on this one as to whether it supports any of the other services. Because some of them do support like Android and things like that, so that you can play them on basically on your handheld, right? In a way, how cool is that? That you can take your gaming wherever you want, because that's one of the advantages of cloud is as long as you have the account and you're playing off the services of a cloud-based infrastructure, wherever you're at, you should be able to access those games. So GeForce Now has a couple options. They have a free option that basically gives you standard access to the service, but it's limited by only 1 hour gaming sessions. Every hour you get dropped out. And you can reconnect right after that, but you go into a queue if there's not resources available. Their Founders Edition, which is $5 a month, you get extended gaming sessions. Last I heard, it's 6 hours of gaming solid without being kicked out. You also get priority access, so you get top of the queue, and it actually uses GeForce level RTX based hardware, so you get HDR and RTX support. So games that support it, you get that. They have a special offer that gets all those things, as well as gives you a Battle Pass token and exclusive Hyperscape in-game content for $25, which gives you 6 months. So you can buy ahead on that. But at $5 a month, it's one of the cheapest services out there, and there is a free option that goes with it.
That's
so like I said, it's got the RTX, and this one doesn't have a bunch of the other information built into the front page of what they have. But what I can discuss also about the service is that where it basically is limited by which games you'll have. Still a big catalog. I think they have access to some 600 games right now. But the challenge with theirs, unlike Sony, and this is true of any of these other system ones, you pay for each game that you play on their service. So where Sony, you pay the one-time fee or the monthly fee and you get access to their whole library. With GeForce Now, you have to buy the license for each game that you play. So the $5 a month. So
that way you're not renting the license. You're just renting the hardware.
Yeah, just the hardware. It streams at 1080p 60 hertz. So kind of the full HD normal high-end gaming experience. And so those are some of the key features of it. I think, did I have some of the other articles I had talked a little bit about.
Have you tried that one, sir?
I have not tried the GeForce Now myself yet. That's one that they say it requires, for minimum specs, a 15 megabit connection, and 25 megabit is suggested. And it will work on either Mac OS or Windows 7 and up PCs. So that's something to note, that you can play this on a Mac. So if you're a gamer, but you have a more productivity PC, including the Mac services, you can still use it. And I think that was the main thing on this one. It has a huge assortment of games. Basically, if you can play it on, if you can play it on Steam, you can play it on GeForce Now. Is kind of how it It makes sense. But it had its own setup. One of the challenges with some of the services, and I forget if this is one of the ones it is that some of them, if your service goes away, it's do you lose access to those games and titles if you purchase them? I want to say, in a way, yes, with GeForce Now, that because it's only on there, that if you stop paying for it, you don't have access to it anywhere else. That you have.
Well, I guess that's why you have the free service, right? So you can technically still access
it. Yes, if you did buy it, you can still play it. You just have the hour limit. But arguably, right, if your game session's only an hour long for a night, you might be fine in that free setup, especially if you're gaming on the road or something like that. It may work out. And so, but that's the one from them. Again, 600 plus titles that they work with, which is really good, but some limitations on what all you can do with it. All of these services, by the way, do work well with a controller. And it's just some of them work better with certain controllers or others. Most of them will work with kind of the default of the Xbox controller and the PlayStation controller. Those are kind of the given, this is what they're for.
That makes sense, because I think the PlayStation controller is deemed one of the best out there in the world. So that makes sense.
Is it? It's so ergonomically shite.
No, I think it is very good. The Xbox One is sort of like a contentious competitor.
How? The offset is so comfortable for thumbsticks.
Controller is deemed
two thumbsticks down here is shite. Having two thumbsticks down low is just so terrible.
It's super comfortable. I like it.
No, it's not. My fingers get mad at this because, like, nice thing here is anything where I do use both thumbsticks, this is comfortable. This is not. And I almost never use D-pad with thumbstick. It's either D-pad and buttons or both thumbsticks. And this is way more comfortable for both thumbsticks. And so, like, I do not, because I grew up on PlayStation and I didn't want to go to Xbox. And then as soon as I did play with it for real, I was like, this is so much better. So much better. Anyhow. Nice thing is all of them work. Yeah, all of them work very well with PC, which is nice. Well, and the beautiful thing is either one that you can pair with a device like Android stuff for the ones that support it, that's what you do and you can play on your phone, which is really slick. All right. Did you want to bring up another one of the services? Or because I've got
just wanted to mention that in the chat, 10 and 15 said show 453 best controller. That's not a terrible idea. We'd probably just say mouse and keyboard and then it'd be a 3-second show. But
no, I disagree completely because mouse and keyboard is only good for certain types of games. Give me a controller on a platformer every day of the week. If I'm playing something like a Rayman game or something like that, God, I don't want to do that on keyboard. If I'm playing a fighting game, God, I don't want to do that on keyboard. If I'm playing a sports title,
I don't mind either way.
Oh, it's so terrible.
For me, it's where you are. If I want to relax in front of on the couch in front of the TV with a PlayStation or something, then I'll want a controller. Mouse and keyboard is cumbersome at that point.
So let's hold this as a potential future comment because we definitely have opinions on it. So thank you, Ionis, for that one. Some of the other services out there, one that I don't think either of us can talk to because we haven't touched, that I'll describe, and then we'll get into, I think, Stadia after that, is Shadow. And Shadow is like this hardcore step beyond just regular like gaming PC aspect because you're actually paying for full-on like access to a PC instance that you can do more than just game on. You're getting full access to a more powerful PC in the cloud. So theoretically, you can do rendering. You can do rendering on it. You can install kind of all kinds of stuff on it. But because it's also a full instance of a PC, you can also essentially do any of the gaming services you would on PC, and you just link your accounts. So you use you go ahead and use your Steam account, use your Battle.net account, use your Origin account, and play the games you own via this high-end gaming PC that you're paying access to stream back to you. So you can still do it, like we said, off a Chromebook, things like that. Now, the challenge is because of that, the interface is a PC, plus and minus. So you may not have a good access to doing this on a phone, having to navigate a PC and start your service and stuff. But if you're on a bigger screen, absolutely makes sense. And it may take you, I think it allows you to bring it up in a way that you can do it mostly through console, but it is playable on any system, which is awesome, on any device. Now, it costs more, and that's one of the challenges of it, where this one's starting at $12 a month. and they have a couple tiers, and it basically describes what level of performance hardware you're getting access to. Because I think the higher end tier of it is $49 a month, like $50 a month. But it gives you some beastly server level quality machine. And I would argue whether or not that's really good for gaming or is necessary for gaming. Like, sure, it's good, but is it necessary? So I believe you can get away with the lower cost on it. There are very specific kinds of what hardware you get for each one of these services, and a lot of them are kind of spec'd around what a console 1080p experience would be. But that's one of the ones that this does push beyond. Now, it's also more dynamic than some. This, like a couple of the services, will do 60 hertz 4K. But if you're not at 60 hertz 4K, it actually does support 144 hertz 1080p. So, which is a weird one for me, other than, yes, you can get gaming TVs that can do like 120 hertz and stuff. So theoretically, you could probably play it at that faster refresh on a TV. But it gets to a weird point for me, because if you have a monitor that'll do 144 hertz, I would be surprised for the person that has a high hertz monitor that doesn't also have a high powered gaming PC. Because I don't see why you'd buy one without the other. If that makes sense, right? That one's a little weird to me. But it does support it. They have, like I said, 3 offers to hit your things. They want you to have at least 15 megabit per second download to do it. And it's very much available kind of throughout not only the country, but a lot of places in the world. I saw a couple of these where, for our international audience, some services exist in more countries than others. Some are very limited. Because there's a couple that only are in like 7 countries, where I think NVIDIA's is in 60 countries or something like that with the GeForce Now. So that is something to be aware. I'm sure the PlayStation Now has a bunch more as well. So a lot of anecdotal stuff about how good it is. It's currently, as it says, pre-order. You can get into it now, and there's certain which ones are available. What's also interesting is they're talking about, because it's that, support for things like VR and other things when it comes off of this hardware. So a lot of potential of what this could be, a little more expensive, but also potential for a much greater overall like PC experience, which is kind of neat. And so that's another one that's out there, but it also requires a little more you to do it.
Yeah, I prefer the idea from the customization aspect. The fact you just link your accounts, you don't have to worry about paying for titles or the temporary licenses or anything. It's just your games. That's kind of neat. So if you're like a big gamer who maybe travels a lot but has access to good internet from the hotels you go to or something, that I think Shadow makes a lot of sense, right? Because you can do anything pretty much. And if it's does it have to be Windows, or can you also have like a Linux instance?
Well, I'm sure it would, but it definitely showed Mac, Android, things like that. So I don't see why you couldn't do it in others.
No.
I think I didn't look specific
Android might
for
be
that.
tough.
Well, just for the interface piece of it, if you're on a small screen, to do the
if it's a PC though, it's entirely customizable. So you can have it so that, like, just press this script and it'll do what you want it to do.
Yeah, I was going to say there's ways to minimize it, and like GeForce Now I think comes up with what looks like the Steam big screen view kind of look or something. So there's some of them that come up optimized for controller performance.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think it's a really powerful and neat product, and I would certainly be interested in having access myself. I love the idea of using Shadow. If I had good enough internet access, I'd probably be tempted by that. I don't, so that's that. Which one are you tempted by so far? The ones we've discussed, Shadow and NVIDIA and PlayStation Now, and a little bit of Xbox.
Well, so the thing is, like, my personal experience makes this all hard for me, and so I'll save some of that towards the end, because I do think kind of an evaluation of where does it make sense, and arguably because of the amount I invest in my home setup and the hardware that I keep on hand, for me currently that's a non. Because I already have all the PCs. So if I'm going to play it, I'm going to play it locally. I have the storage. I have strong enough hardware to do it all and such. But one of the other advantages for streaming systems as a whole, much more so for like the Shadow experience and GeForce Now, is that, and actually Stadia from Google, is that they can scale the hardware they put behind it with hardware as it comes out. So you never have to necessarily pay a different amount for your access to these services. You're always going to get potentially upgraded hardware. It works in a lot of cloud instances that once they go through and rescope or respec the cloud as a whole, you get that advantage, because they're doing it to get rid of old hardware to keep things that are maintained. And now the new hardware they're running on your same service is even better. And so it'll be like,
and it makes so much sense because they'll be cheaper for them if they have, you know, I don't know, 500,000 top tier servers with all these amazing graphics on board. They will probably be getting some good prices for their cheaper versions of for the graphics cards and stuff that they need to buy in bulk, right?
Well, that's not, yeah.
So I think this makes a lot of sense financially.
So it's another thing is, yeah, exactly what you're saying, that they find ways to likely minimize cost and for their upgrades and stuff. But the nice thing for us as consumers who would be using services and such is that it's now something you don't have to worry about. It's kind of a blend between the argument you hear from console players a lot that say, but I buy this, I know everything will just work for it. In a way, you're paying for the service and it's always going to be able to play these new things because they're taking care of that. They're taking care of security issues. They're taking care of maintenance issues and things like that. And so you don't have to worry about it. As long as you have hardware that can stream it, you're good. Babs brings up in the conversation, says he predicts that all game licenses will forbid players from games on the cloud hardware. Game studios enter into contracts with cloud streaming services a la Netflix. Games rotate around services just like movies do. Lots of content goes streaming only. Justification includes no cheaters, less buggy, as they only have one platform to support. There has been instances, I think, with GeForce Now where that's happened, where licenses have expired for certain games and they just kind of disappeared from being available on the service. And so that is a consideration, but it's the same thing we do deal with today when it comes to Netflix, Hulu, all those things. They're all licensed, and we've seen that content rotate on any of our streaming platforms. So that's a reality that exists. Ionos goes in there and says, I'm going to take a stab at this and say streaming services might be more popular with the casual gamers who don't want to spend money on expensive setups, kind of what I was talking about. And poor gamers might find streaming services more limiting. And he was thinking off the top of his head, access to modding. But there is a point out there that things like Steam have shown that you can do, and actually Microsoft did this on Xbox and I don't know if PlayStation did as well with Skyrim, that you can support mods on other closed platforms through your own internal mod support system. Because you could do mods on Xbox and others, just not every mod. It was ones that had to get vetted through. So it would be an interesting thing, although one of the challenges I have is not enough people in the world support and do modding. And I would love to see more, because modding is brilliant. It does so much. Anyhow.
As somebody who has technically now joined the community of modders of the world, I agree. But modding is hard to get into. You need some pretty hardcore skills for some mods.
Well, so you have them to use mods, right? Or to make mods, but as a consumer of mods, it's really easy.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about it.
And it extends gameplay so much in so many different games.
I think it needs to be kind of more like esports, where there's some sort of encouragement, like a financial, not for everybody, maybe just the top 1%. Like if your mod is in the top 10 for the month, you'll get $1,000 check for the first 12 months of the game's lifespan. That would encourage so many good mods. That would encourage so many.
We ran into some challenges.
Free DLC.
There are some things out there that allow you to sell mods, and it's worked to some degree, but that's always been a really sticky wicket for people to deal with, because it depends on the game you're modding and whether they support mods for it. Because once you start selling mods for a game, you get into this weird thing as, are you monetizing someone else's overall thing by selling something?
I don't agree with selling mods. I think it's BS. I think the official person who's made the game can do that, and that's what we call expansions, right?
Well, some games have actually supported it, where they allow modders to sell theirs, but that's a mixed thing. Because it makes sense. If a modder puts all that effort. Yeah, so anyhow. So that's the current state. Now, I do want to, before we go too far into the plus minus of this, go into our last major one we're going to discuss, and that's Stadia or whatever. It's the Google one. And so this one, and unfortunately, because I already have it account linked to me, I don't know if I can see the default page. Oh, wait, I know I can. Let me go into
Incognito did.
What?
Incognito did.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to do. I was like, wait, I can go to incognito mode and do it. So that's what I was just about to do. All right. So for Stadia, this is the Google offering, like we said, and it's basically $10 a month. Although right now, and the reason that Ken and I both played with this is they have a free month trial. And so you can get a free month, and with that, you can get into the whole access to it. With it, they give you games, both some that are free to claim and you can just play. I think there's a dozen or so of those, as well as you can, in addition, buy games. And then you have access to those games theoretically indefinitely as long as you have access to the service. So they say access is free. So the nice thing about that is once you do play and get into the payment and do stuff in it, I think you can still get back in and play the games that you purchased. That part I'm like, I haven't figured out fully. Now, this is another one that does support up to 4K 60. It's 5.1 surround. They do their own store stuff with like discounts, things like that. And they have, like I said, their free games with Stadia. So that's their page for it. The games they support right now, I think, are 60 games. The first ones on the list here are some of the free ones that I actually did play around with some of. And then they have all the additional ones that are like the top AAA titles you're used to that you can go ahead and play. Hey, Shadowvice, thanks for joining. You missed me reading your email, so you'll have to go back and watch. It does work to some degree with keyboard and mouse as well as controller. I found the controller experience to work more for me, but it is limited as a whole for the number of games it supports. So with that, let's see if I go back to my notes for Stadia. Yeah, I think that's the main things I had on that one. Now, this is one Ken and I both want to talk anecdotally about because I think we both tried it, right?
Yep.
And so, Ken, I'll start with your experience because you had talked about your PlayStation Now experience. How was your experience with Stadia, and did it differ in many ways?
So yeah, I'll just quickly discuss some of the features as well, so that people know what the differences are. Stadia is owned by Google, which gives it a lot of benefits, right? Just like the Nvidia one also has a lot of benefits by the fact that they make the hardware, so it's probably cheaper for them to and easier for them to acquire the hardware required to do this sort of thing. So the benefit with Google is all you need to install to run any of these games is Google Chrome. You only need Google Chrome or another browser, but it works best in Chrome.
Well, this is absolutely, it's important. This is a browser-based experience.
Yeah, which is
better or worse.
Really well done. It's like you don't notice you're in the browser. Once you hit play, it maximizes. It's like you're in a normal game. You don't think you're in Google Chrome. You just think you're in the game, and that's super impressive. When I first realized that was the case, like I remember it popped in and said, "Do you want to play now?" I was like, "I take it this will take me to the installer page." I hit play now. Nope, full screen, start playing. And I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute, that's interesting," and that's when I thought this might be worth talking about because that's a big selling point, right? Anybody out there who can hit yes, I agree, can start playing a game. That's pretty impressive. You don't need to install some weird software. You don't need any special driver updates or whatever. You don't need anything on your machine. Even a Google Chromebook, a notebook, would be able to do this because you just need Google Chrome. So I launched Orcs Must Die 3, I think or is it 4? I don't know. It's
3 is
so
the
they
released
they released Unleashed like 3 years ago, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but I drew this stupid painting in Microsoft Paint and put it on Twitter saying, "Can I please have beta access now?" Because it was a closed beta, and they responded saying, "Yeah, sure," and they gave me a key, so I got to play with Orcs Must Die Unleashed, and I was super excited because 1 and 2 were so much fun. I really enjoyed them. Unleashed was a piece of crap, right? It was all, which I'm so sad to say because I had so much love for the first 2, but it was all just like, oh, it's free to play, but give us your money to unlock anything or do anything, and it was gimmicky, and half the mechanics were gone, and it just wasn't fun anymore. So I didn't even realize the next Orcs Must Die was out after this. It didn't cross my radar because even if it did, I might have just ignored it. But I thought, let's try it out. So I started playing, and I was like, well, first of all, I'll mention the game briefly because now that I've given it a lead up. The game looks fine, right? It looks like fun. It reminds me of 1 and 2 more than it does Unleashed. It doesn't look like any microtransactions. It looks like it's just gameplay. So I'm actually quite keen on the game from the looks of it. I didn't get to play much of it, however. Now, my biggest problem with this, unlike Google Now, for some reason, I couldn't get a good enough internet connection to actually use it.
Okay.
Even though I'm on the same computer now, I'm live streaming right now to you guys. Well, I'm Skyping with Wayne, right? But you know what I mean? I'm also watching Twitch. My wife's watching Netflix. All fine, right? Where this is all no problem. Why is it that streaming a game, which by the way isn't the most intensive, is Orcs Must Die anyway, And all it's really doing is streaming video to me while I send controls to a server to play it, right? I'm just watching a video, really, technically, as far as the interconnection is concerned. So why didn't it work correctly? Maybe there was some weird network issue with my computer compared to somebody else's, right? I don't know. I'm not going to try and answer, but I could not play the game. It was unplayable. The sound kept cutting out, and I couldn't actually experience the gameplay because of it. I managed to get through the first tutorial level, and for the first time ever in Orcs Must Die, I didn't 100% it. A couple of bad guys got through in the tutorial level because it kept glitching out, and I'd be like shooting somebody, it would lag for 2 seconds, and he'd be behind me, and I'd be like, what? And on the last wave that happened, 3 guys got through the end wave, and I was like, well, that makes me not enjoy the game because I feel like it's not about skill anymore; it's about whether my internet connection is good enough, and that's why also I don't play many FPSs, I guess, and also I'm bad at them.
Well, so it's interesting, Ken, because as you're talking about this and we're streaming the show, I'm playing Stadia right now on stream, playing Metro 2033 Redo. And
no problems.
And people can see the performance of it. That's here. And so to show.
Well, what can I say? I mean, like like I said, it might just be me, right? But I certainly noticed an oddity there. Next, my other big issue was the interface is really clunky. I actually struggled to find their library, and it took me about 5 minutes to work out where to go. I have a PhD in computing science. That should not be the case with me. I don't think it's due to a lack of skill from my front. I think it's just a really poor user interface, which is surprising because Google are, again, kind of renowned for their software engineering abilities and their design abilities. So that kind of surprised me, and it feels like they didn't put enough effort into this. It feels like they just threw it together, kind of. It is in beta, I believe. It's still in an early phase, at least. So
Stadia,
perhaps
I think Stadia is officially out now.
Is it? Okay. Well, then they definitely have no excuse.
Well, so you say that, it's interesting because for me, I didn't have any problem with it. It worked actually wonderfully for me. And the only thing that took me a moment to figure out was how to exit games. And I do.
That was also kind of strange, yeah.
Oops, there it is. Oh, use equipment. There we go. Like for me, one of the challenges I had. There we go. Hey, as I'm trying to figure out how to play the game as I'm going. This is currently streaming in 4K on my big screen here, and I'm playing it with the controller, right? As I'm doing this, and it's working fine. Oh, I see something up there, and I feel the controller shaking. Oh, I have to put the gas mask on before I.
This is what happens when you play games during the show, sir. You get distracted.
Well, but I wanted to show, like, I'm doing this while we're streaming, and it's playable. And I'm fine. And now it took me a second again to figure out kind of what it takes to control each thing. Because you're saying Orcs Must Die specifically. What I had to learn that took me a second was, that I have to hold the controller's like thing to get to the exit game piece. And now you're seeing my whole setup here. But when I go to the problem I had is I go to their user interface here, and it's harder for me to change like out and into which game I was going to play. Or not that. What my problem is browser based, but once I hit play, it automatically maximizes. And I had trouble figuring out, can I do this in non full screen mode? So once I hit back to game, it maximizes. That's my only real negative I've had with this experience.
Minor gripe, yeah.
Well, for me, it's an issue because I have this 56-inch monitor. And for most people, they're like, what? Well, because I sit monitor distance from it, if I play too many games this close at that height or that full screen, I very rarely play anything full screen, it negatively impacts. I'll get nauseous in a lot of ways. And so for me, I play most of my games in windowed mode right now. It's why I actually cannot wait to upgrade to a 3000 series NVIDIA card. But it means that some things perform better than others. But I've had that challenge. Now, I think this is one that I didn't actually play controller. I'm pretty sure I played this one with the keyboard mouse because it made sense to me to be able to quickly jump around. But for people who are watching, this is all real time where I'm in here, like clicking on each of the things. It's the normal game and interface. So like Ken was saying, though, this heavily depends on what your internet connection is. But here's the thing. It's not just your internet connection. what also matters is the connection to the server. That's an important piece, because if you don't have a solid connection to the server, then you're absolutely going to suffer for it. And that's something that it's just the reality essentially of what this experience is. And so,
there's a good point from Babs there, actually, the difference between latency and throughput. I've yet to hear a good analogy for this, and I'm sure there is one. But I've never taught networking. It's something I did like one course in many years ago. But the basic premise is that the idea that it might take you 0.001 seconds to send something from a computer to one on the other side of the world. That's really impressive. But if that something is a single number, is different from that being 10,000 numbers. Right. So being able to send something quickly but small, or something large but fast, are entirely different concepts. So, for example, quite a lot of bandwidth that's based on satellites, it often has got a very crap latency. It takes a long time to send information up and down through all the wires and so on. It often has a high throughput. So you can send a lot of stuff within a second, but it takes like 5 seconds to initiate the
the big thing with satellite I always talked about was, you'll see, and it makes sense for people who are in remote situations where that's maybe your only real answer. It totally makes sense to do it, but there is a limit essentially to your experience that it's going, like, I would not game on satellite if I could avoid it, essentially.
Oh no.
But if that's all you've got because you're in such a remote place, then game on satellite, right? Then that's what you use because that's what you have. And so that is an important thing to know.
It's fine. But Babs raises a good point, though. So my interconnection is good and generally works fine for stuff, but maybe it's to do with the fact that I can connect fast, but not a high amount of data at once. I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know. Well, so the other side of that, though, it's not just your latency to your server, right? It's the latency to the gaming architecture and server that you're trying to connect to. And so
yes,
you may have a great service and in general get to websites and things like that around the net just fine. But if where you're trying to connect is further away because of where they have placed their various servers, then it may not matter how fast you connect to because you're geographically separate from where you're trying to connect to. And in doing so, that may make it so that really you may not have access to whichever gaming service in a meaningful way. That it doesn't matter. They are too far away from you. And that's something that I don't think gets discussed enough, but is really important to be aware of. And so,
absolutely, and again, it makes perfect sense when you actually think about it. Sending mail has the same issue, right? You need to, if you're sending it across the world, it doesn't matter if they guarantee 1 day postage packaging. It'll probably be a lot longer if you got to send to their side of the world, right?
Yes,
just because it's fast going to their next door neighbor doesn't mean it's fast to their side of the world. Yeah.
Yes, and so in general, this is all stuff I wanted to share as well because I remember you mentioning earlier, Ken, how you had some struggles with it. And so I wanted just people in general to realize that your personal experience may vary. And these are some of the factors that could do it. And so for me, I tested earlier during the pre-show. Anyone who caught it during the pre-show, I was playing in that one. I did both Strange Brigade, which is Hando, you asked me what the game I was playing at the end was. And I also played Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, which is a fighter. And my experience with those were both quite good. In fact, my biggest challenge I had was playing PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. That one, maybe it's because it's the older Battle Royale and it's a bit clunky anyways, felt odd and not precise for me. And I had troubles with that one, and I want to say Panzer's Dragoon, where every once in a while there was just enough of a hiccup in my stream that I'd be turning, and next thing you know, I'd be facing a completely different direction. That was probably my biggest challenge.
I don't think I would ever trust. Well, I don't think in the next couple of years, until some big breakthrough in networking comes along, like an Ansible or something. I don't think I'll be trusting FPSs and things that, or League of Legends, things that require really quick
really
reactions,
precise,
and it's online anyway. So not only are you hoping that the servers are connecting to their other players quickly, but you have to connect to the server on top of that. You're adding an additional layer of connectivity there.
So there is
the chances of screw up are high.
There are some issues with specific, I would say, types of games that might be a challenge, but it's going to heavily depend on your connection. So, like I said, my general performance and everything was quite good, at least with Stadia. I haven't tried the others. I'd actually be kind of curious to try the PlayStation Now, seeing more about it. I'm some curiosity as to how it would be. So when we get to it, and I do want to, before we go past what all of them are, I wanted to bring up at least what Microsoft's is, because they have this newer, it's in beta right now, the Microsoft gaming, cloud gaming, with their Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. I think it's going to end up costing something like $15 a month with that. Oh, wait, I have to turn on the other screen thing when I'm sharing. Where did that go? This is the problem with me on the fly saying, I'm going to share this whole screen versus part of it. But that they... there it is. I'm looking at the wrong one. There we go. Now I can show you guys that.
You're a noob, Wayne. You're a noob.
I am. It's me trying to do it real time. I need to set up the Stream Deck to do more of this. So here, it's nice. It's another one that they will play on most various platforms. Don't know what the price is yet. Is theoretically they said somewhere like $15 a month, but we're not sure. They currently support over 100 games, but their whole point is you can play this on your Android mobile phone or tablet or on a PC using it. And so that's one of their big things. They've really built an interface that's supposed to work great on mobile. And as long as you have some kind of controller attached to it, it works. Oh, one of the things I didn't say about Shadow that actually, you're right, can work well is they have a very good virtual setup on Shadow for virtual controller, virtual keyboard stuff that allow you to impact how you utilize it and customize it so it can work really well for anything. All of them are supposed to support high quality, high level. You can use an Xbox controller on it. You can use their connect with friends means and such to play with others, things like that, and generally get access to their Game Pass, stuff like that. So that's one that's coming out, and you can get into it now on beta for free. Like I said, you just have to sign up and see if they respond. And they say that they recommend, or they keep advertising this Razer Kishi, which is a gaming, phone, I believe, that has specific stuff into it. But it's basically the Xbox library of games and things that you'd also find on the Xbox store for the kind of things that you'd play. So I want to make sure we at least mention that one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. And it's going to be interesting to see in the next year or two, because I think it's all very beta and prototypey, even if the ones that are released, right? I think they're all sort of still testing the waters to see where things will go, because we haven't seen a huge uptick in this yet. We haven't seen everybody abandoning their PlayStations. People are still talking about PS5, and they're still talking about the new Xbox as well, and upgrading their PCs, because right now we haven't all just sold in and given our put all on green, right? Where green is the streaming services, and it can, I don't know, like I like the idea of it. Like, if you asked me at 10 years old, could you imagine that you could play every single game that ever exists on PlayStation, and instead of spending, like, you're asking your dad to spend £50 on a single game, he only needs to spend £10 a month? I'd be like, that's awesome. That is so cool, and I would be in for it. Now I'm sort of like, exclusives are a pain. I don't want to support that. I don't want to support a single library. Like, and I know we are all very like, hurrah Steam, but in reality, I'm as much as I enjoy Steam and love it because I've got all my games there, I kind of hate it because it's a monopoly, right? And I don't want to encourage that as well. But at the same time, I hate having multiple streaming services. We've got this weird mishmash of clashing of wants and needs in games now. So I feel like I can generally predict quite well what's going to happen in the gaming industry next year or two. I find myself unsure with this because I in one aspect, I really want this to be successful. On the other, I don't think it can be. And because we all have invested in Steam, we all invest in our own services that already exist.
So here's the thing, because I think what you're bringing up is an important question. Who are streaming gaming services for? Who are they for? Right?
Yes.
Because arguably, when we go back in the day to, as Iona says, Hulu Fix Plus Access as a combination of things. But when Netflix first started, right, and actually Babs is online, he'll remember this story for me back in the day to date myself. I remember my first experience with Netflix. And here's for the kids who don't believe this is real, when all they used to do was email DVDs to you versus the old-fashioned Blockbuster experience where you'd go rent them. And the first place I ever experienced it was at Bab's house when he still lived on top of, I think it was not Russian Hill, one of the hills in San Francisco, living his, early tech bachelor life kind of thing. And I remember hanging out with him, and all of a sudden we had some movies we watched. I was like, these are cool. And he's like, hey, hold on real quick. I need to return these. And as we were going past somewhere local, he just dropped them in a bin. And I didn't realize at the time it was a mail slot. I was like kind of confused. I was like, this isn't a rental place. Weird. And then a day or two later, we had new movies, but I was hanging out with him the whole time. And so I was like, where did those come from? And he's like, oh, this is Netflix. They just send you the DVD in the mail. I was like, what? That can't work. How would that ever work?
I remember that being advertised.
Yeah,
I never went for it.
Well, it was something I didn't believe it would work because I thought at the time, well, you live in San Francisco, this very dense, populated area. You guys can get returns on movies that quick. But that's where basically Netflix started. Yeah. Next thing I know, it started eking out as they built the infrastructure, and it worked. And next thing you know, everybody had Netflix accounts and were getting DVDs. And you could change your tier 1 at a time, 2 at a time, 10 at a time, whatever you did, to constantly be shuffling DVDs and no longer have to go to a Blockbuster or a Hollywood Video or something like that. Then they went digital. And there was a first step of like, nobody's going to pay to stream content. Who's got the internet for that? Mm-hmm. And now today's argument, I would say, who would have DVDs mailed to their house today?
Some still do. Some still do.
But by comparison, the argument's flipped, right?
Yeah.
And even we've seen as we go forward with new consoles, buying physical media is getting difficult. I was actually impressed because you can buy a Blu-ray set for Microsoft Flight. Comes on like 10 discs.
Oh, wow. That's really surprising.
It's ridiculous. Well, because it's such a big world map and stuff that some people may want to play offline. If they're actually building simulators, things like that, they're not building, people are insane when it comes to flight stuff. But anyhow, you can. But so the idea that we're going just a step past, where already today, a lot of the games you play are downloaded. And then in order, especially on console, to play the next, you got to delete and do the next. We're only so far away from a streaming service making sense. And especially for me, the one I throw out there for the community to decide upon. Now, we're a little unique because a lot of us have built up gaming rigs, be it PCs, consoles, or whatever we've invested in, or are already ready to invest in the next generation. But what if you were, like you said, a parent and your kid's just getting into gaming and they want to play with friends and get on this gaming experience? If I knew there was a service that I could pay, especially like the PlayStation Now one's got it to a level, but if I wanted to keep up with the Joneses and had more recent stuff, something like Stadia, where I get a selection of new games for free that are already there, and then it's $10 a month and you buy the game, and I never have to give this kid a gaming PC or buy a new console. And I don't have to buy a new console every 2 to 3 to 5 years.
And I don't have to trust the kid with some powerful hardware that he's going to spill his juice on or something.
Or something like that. And by the way, because one of the things I had on the comparison with is just the current gen consoles. Because to get the full experience of an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4 and the upcoming ones, as we talked about last week, you're going to pay the additional service fee for their online connection. And right now, if you buy it per year, that's $5 a month.
Yeah.
And so those systems, even if you buy them outright for $500, $600 likely on these new systems coming out this year, you're still going to pay an additional $5 a month every month just so they can play online. And so if you're now paying like a GeForce Now, which is already $5 a month, and gets 600 games to it and does all the stuff, then you're actually saving yourself the out-the-door cost by about everything short of a controller purchase.
Yep.
Right? And whatever hardware you already have in place. So in a way, that could actually make a lot of sense. And because they're keeping up with the Joneses and always having the latest hardware and always the latest games on there, that it may make sense for someone who's never bought a console to say, hey, son, you're right. I know you wanted that PlayStation 5 that's going to cost $500-$600. But look, I just signed you up for Stadia on your Chromebook. And oh, by the way, you plug your Chromebook via HDMI into the television, and now you can play all those games you want in 1080p or in 4K 60 for $10 a month. And here's some of the games that are already there. Now, the only challenge, right, like I said, the out the door, this will not work for you, is the internet connection and where you are compared to their servers.
For sure.
But if those are good, because like I said, my experience was actually pretty solid. When you guys saw me playing Metro there, I hadn't even turned on the game in my Stadia. I literally, as we're playing, went, okay, let me try this one, hit play, showed it full screen, and then you saw me playing it at 4K 60 hertz.
You gotta wonder how the back end works for this, because that means there's a whole lot of servers that are ready to go and play the game and make a new game state like that.
Yes.
Does that mean that they all just every single server will have it installed? Or
that's how cloud computing works for the most part, right? When you really get into the essence of good cloud computing, they're all virtual machines on top of solid hardware that's in server racks. And as any instance gets spun up, they're just accessing the saved state and allocating hardware to it, and thus you're now live and going. And with this one especially, all they're really doing, they're streaming you from wherever they need to the game experience, and all they have to really access that is true of you is your save game. And they now know where you were at in your saved game, and that file's tiny for them to access, and now they can stream it from wherever's closest. And if you've already set up a region, they're going to be local there anyways. And so it makes so much sense. And actually, Babs is saying a great things. I'm sure they will give parents the same control they do for controlling what kids watch on Netflix on PC and stuff. So think about that.
That's also a very good point, actually.
Better filters, better control. And so while it may be, I think, Ken, for us specifically, this could be a hard pill to swallow. Maybe it's just maybe this truly is just my legacy mentality of why I keep so much physical stuff around me, why I have such a big house, why I have so many things, is because I grew up with that as a sign of just my success and benefits and good. And so having access to my stuff right here all the time is a level of risk reduction and stability and good for me. Like, I can still play a lot of my games even when the internet goes down. Because there's the negative side of this, right? If the internet goes down, you got nothing.
Yeah, but the internet's becoming even today, when we were already how many decades ahead of Google.
Well, here's the thing. Earthweaver said at the earlier part of the show, they had a massive storm at his house recently. He has internet where he's at work. At home, he has none. Because power lines, other things are blowing down. But what I'm saying is,
developed countries don't go down.
Well, but here's the thing. No. Well, no, it was literally because trees blew over onto power lines and onto network connection things.
But that's the problem, is the network cables are often above the ground in America. It's not a thing in the UK. Like your internet doesn't go out.
No, that's because here we have distance to cover. And burying your lines over 1,000 miles is really expensive. And no other country but the US has it. That issue.
Being in town, they could really do it in town, but they don't for some reason.
It depends on where you're at and if you have to dig up old roads or not. Because even in San Francisco, when I went out there, they have so many lines that are above ground, but it's because it's so densely packed and older city that you'd have to tear up massive parts to bury your infrastructure. And so it does make sense why not everyone does. But regardless, for whatever reason, if a substation goes out or something, to not have access, you have nothing. Where at least with my own PC, as long as I have power, I have games. Right? Earth saying, I still don't have internet at home. It was the lines coming into the town too that got destroyed. So their branch coming into town got destroyed for whatever reason. But yeah, anyhow. Yeah, but I'm saying there's a risk there.
That's funny you say that, because the same thing happened in Iowa to Kitten Features recently. Their internet went down because the whole town went down, and maybe it was related.
Like I said, there were some big storms that came through. He showed some video and the trees were just blowing. He showed pictures today of crashed trees and stuff all over. So it was a pretty big storm. Anyhow, but that's one of the risks that come with everything you do that gets pushed to cloud, is that once you lose access, you have nothing. And so that's why, like, even with media, right? For everybody who no longer buys music and doesn't have I know a lot of people who don't actually have MP3s on their device because they use a streaming service for everything.
Dude, that's me. That's been me for like years now.
Yeah. So if for whatever reason you're out of range, your connection goes down or something happens that you can't get access to any of it because it's not on there, Yikes. But yes, if you have stable cell service, then you're usually good.
The other problem that's really definitely worth mentioning is the problem of ownership, right? If you put, I don't know, 500 hours, well, that's not even that much, that's 10,000 hours into a video game, and then suddenly the license is revoked from the server, right, or the company, you've lost all that time into that game, then you can't even maybe you might not even get access to the save file, you know?
That is one of the
might
concerns.
be done in that forever.
But that's another
scary one. Now, they would have your data, and
we have that risk, though, with everything that we don't have physical copies of, or everything that requires a digital authentication. We've talked about that before. Because if, for whatever reason, Steam disappeared tomorrow, what would that do to all of us? Because even I would argue every single one of our listeners has a Steam account and has money invested in. Like everyone watching this right now, I think does, at least in my experience.
There are websites which can test the value of your account according to the current prices and existing prices of stuff. So like mine's is quite good because I got almost everything on sale. So it'd be like, you spent like £2,000, but it's worth 20,000 or something, and that's kind of nice to see. But still, £20,000 worth of games that you could lose like that. That's terrifying.
Be able to play. And so we have that risk today. But yes, if a service absolutely goes under, that's gone. Where at least if I have physical media that I can install in a local instance, I can play it again tomorrow. I can pull the Syndicate box off the shelf here that still has 3.5-inch floppies in it, install it, and play it. Right now, granted, I don't have a floppy drive on this computer right now, so maybe I couldn't. But yes, at least having your own physical copies of stuff, you still have access to your library. So that's a risk. But in general, and I'm kind of curious at this point as we're getting close to the top, the end of the show here. For everyone who's been watching, where are you at when it comes to the idea of these streaming services? Are these things, like Ken said, that you're interested in, that you could see now that you've heard from us, that you might want to check out more information about some of them? Or are you in a state where it's like, nope, this isn't a concern? Because I know in times past, like Hando as a target question, you've had various levels of how high end your hardware was at any given point. What if that was no longer your concern? What if you have your display, you have your interface, you have the PC you invested in 5-6 years ago? I never have to upgrade that. I can just pay the service because it gives me my display and my internet. And so is that enough to never have to worry about saving up for that new PC to be able to continue to game with everybody? Because you have the latest, greatest. You're paying for a 2080 card that's giving you full RTX off of GeForce Now. You're actually seeing it better than other people because you're paying the service fee. And that I'm very curious to hear your guys' responses is it still too early? Are we on the cusp of a revolution in gaming? Is this something that you're like, holy cow, this is what I've been waiting for because I was saving up for that new 33,000 series NVIDIA card that's going to cost $1,000. And when you do the math, right, $1,000, let's see, if I was to just quick math it, if I was doing, we'll say like GeForce Now, $1,000.
Bab said in the chat, 3,000 for my gaming PC and 500 for games. That would pay like 10 years of subscription for one of these services.
Yeah.
Right.
So that at $5 a month, that's 16 years of service. At $5 a month, $1,000.
Yeah.
That's just library. A basic gaming PC. That's not even that's a graphics card.
Let's assume that you have to upgrade your internet connection, right? Because I know I would. Let's imagine that you have to double your internet connection. So let's say there's actually an extra $30 on top per month. That's what it probably really costs for most people, right?
Well, like
then it becomes a bit more realistic.
I still argued if you had to buy just the box of a PC and be in a good gaming state that'll last you a couple of years, $1,000 I can still do it, and it'll last well. If it's going to say, if you want the top end, right, you're looking $2,000 for some of these really high end stuff. And so if I can get a service that's or choosable as I go, and I can change, right, especially if I'm looking at Shadow PC. And I start at $12 a month for the basic service, but now I want to play this other one at a higher end because I got better TV. So I up it to the $25 a month service. But now I'm playing on hardware that is literally a $3,000 PC. Man, wouldn't that be interesting? So, yeah, and I'm hearing in the chat there, right? Sir Pencer saying that, wow, he's close to needing a new PC. Isn't that an interesting discussion? And then you got like Ionis, who's like too new for me right now, but I'm watching and I'm curious. And it says once they smooth out rough edges. Remember, some of these things have just come out of beta, are still in beta.
Yeah.
There's a couple that have been out there, but some of them, I mean, if nothing else, if I was a nostalgia fan and loved PlayStation, that PlayStation Now service for their entire library, including one of the more recent God of Wars and stuff on there, right? I don't know if it's the most recent, but like the one
that's
just
what I
before
did.
it.
I went back and played some old like Sega games because that was available. So I played some like old school, like early 90s Sega games.
Every one of the Sonics and stuff like that and things like that, that if you're paying that much and you have full access to every game ever there, instead of maintaining all these emulators or other ways of playing it, just have to pay for a service that gives me access to everything. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Right.
And plus, for those guys who are on the fence, guys, take one of the free trials. It's free.
Well, that's one of the big ones. Everything today. Sir Pencer actually kind of just brought that up. He said it's pretty low risk. If you don't like it, you can just cancel. Then go spend $2,000 on a new PC. But if that means you hold off for a couple of weeks, like say you're in that state where it's like I kind of want a new PC, but what I'm waiting to buy my new PC is for these new hardware to come out. In the meantime, I'm going to spend $10 a month on a service and keep playing. Because the other thing, like Shadow PC, right? It's a risk reduction too, because with that one, you're using your Steam library, your Battle.net, the stuff you've already paid for. So it's transferable. So even if you then went and bought your $2,000 gaming rig, you would already own all those games because you paid for them and you still have them on Steam, on Battle.net, on Origin, on whatever. And you're just transferring it from a virtual gaming PC to your now local PC. And so it's like, whoa, isn't that an interesting concept? So that's what we're throwing out there today, guys, for you guys to consider when it comes to this current state of gaming and what's coming up in the future here is, yes, not only do we have these new consoles coming out at the end of the year, and I see people chomping at the bit for whether they're going to get into them, but if you're getting into those, or if you look at like what Xbox is providing for Microsoft for their cloud streaming, maybe you don't need a new Xbox. Maybe you just get their cloud gaming service and you have basically everything. Interesting.
And then you get to do it on PC.
Right, which we know, we think is better. There is risk on the other side, as Babs is saying, but then $15 a month for Ubisoft, $10 a month for Microsoft, $50 a month for indie service. Now, one of the challenges, and I mentioned this earlier, is Babs' conversation with that is to do cloud streaming gaming, you need cloud architecture to be behind it. And so as a company, you either need to build up your own servers across multiple locations to support it, or you have to build up an instance within something like the Amazon Web Services cloud at multiple locations and pay them to maintain servers for you to even be able to host this kind of system. Because it's one thing when these companies buy from us, we have our own launcher. The servers they have are just to send you updates and stuff like that. It doesn't matter if it takes you, an extra half a millisecond or half a second or 2 seconds to start to download. So they can have their servers one place in the world, honestly. To have to maintain streaming service centers around the world, that's a different cost. And so I do think there's a bit more of a hurdle for these companies to decide it's worth them trying to only, because that's the other problem, like smaller library, who's going to pay that monthly service fee for Ubisoft only games?
Yeah.
It's bad enough we get pissed that we have to open up a launcher. If we had to pay them just to get access,
we had to pay monthly, screw
because
that.
I only maintain Netflix, Crunchyroll and Amazon Prime, but that's for other reasons as well, for streaming content services. I do not have Hulu. I don't have Disney Plus, right? There's other ones out there I could subscribe for. I don't have any of the individual company ones, CBS All Access, HBO Max, any of those services, because that's a bridge too far for me. That is too many monthly services that I get all I need for content off the 3 I pay for, and I really only pay for 2 of those specifically for content. So yes, it could happen. If it does, God help us. But I don't think that we'll see that as soon. I'll be very curious if other companies ever feel like they want to do that, because the thing is, those companies are already still getting paid from these streaming services because you're buying the game separate. They're still getting paid for that.
They're just being greedy.
The only difference that we've seen with streaming services is that work out of a deal for how much they can sell or how much money they get back for something like Steam selling their games. That's why those companies went their own, because they wanted all the money. These services, they're not selling you games for any less. The companies are still making all their money. So I think it's a less reason for those individual companies to jump into it. Those are my thoughts. What are yours?
Yeah, please let us know. Send in your emails to VtWShowX@gmail.com because we're just coming to the end of the show here. Also, we haven't got a topic set for next week. I just had
next week will have to be Factorial, dude. We went again without even talking about Factorial. Either that or
50 minutes.
Either that or what we need to do is do a midweek one-off game stream of Factorio talking about it, because we need to bring up Factorio 1.0.
We certainly do. But one of the things we have to talk about sometime as well, which is news in the past week. I don't know if I just want to mention this because it's super interesting. Fortnite has been removed from iOS and Android because they are basically fighting with both Apple and Google and saying, you guys are unfair for taking like 20 to 25% of all microtransactions for people buying skins and stuff. We think is BS and we think it's totally unfair and we're going to fight you. They released this stupid animation video of like this evil Apple guy on the screen that like one of the characters is like trying to fight against, and they made a 1984 reference with it. It's just so cringy. When the reality is they're all evil. They're all evil. So, yes. Fight.
I think well, no, I'm happy to have the fight. I've heard it actually more and more recently in news as general about people getting less and less happy with Apple's model of taking essentially 30% of sales off of anything through their app store right off the top. And it's gross sales type thing and such, as well as then also making specific deals for bigger companies to get like 15% deals and stuff, and how it's not necessarily equal for everyone. And that's a whole lot of like, what the hell?
It makes a lot of sense for them. It doesn't make sense for the rest of the world. Yeah.
It's really interesting that these fights are starting to happen right now on top of everything else. So I'll be curious to see where it all pans out. And this will be a shout out back to the EU for one of the few things I will say thank you for, which is their watchdog on like on companies across the world for like privacy and for anti-competitive things. They do more for that than the US has ever done.
Yep.
Because the US is like, but you're a big company and we'll just let you do whatever you want because you pay our government to look the other way.
Capitalism.
Yay!
It's a free market. Unless you're on top, then you get extra benefits.
Yeah, it's not a free market, but man, do we hide it. And so it's so bad. God, capitalism is so overblown in the US. Please, people, learn your terms right. It is and capitalism is only an aspect of what the US functions in. This will be Wayne's end note for the show. Every ism that you hear anything discussed about and tried to be applied especially to the US is false. Because we are a piece of everything. We are socialism, we are democracy, we are a republic, we are capitalist, we are all of those things in some pieces formed together into one conglomeration. And not any one defines us as a whole. So anytime someone tries to bin it, challenge them because it's garbage. We do pieces of all of it, and we should really discuss what's the best answer for it across the board and not fall into any one-ism or any one-ist or thing like that because they're garbage. That it's a way to miss the point. So that's my soapbox for that. But we gotta get out of here. Ken needs to go do trivia and things like that. I'm probably going to jump into Discord after that if people want to play games. So come find me there. But we appreciate you watching the show. And Ken, could you lead us out for today?
You have been listening and watching ShowX on twitch.tv/VtWShowX. We very much appreciate it. Please do subscribe, hit that follow button, do all those things that Twitch allows you to do to support us. We appreciate all of these things. Also follow us on twitter.com/VtWShowX, twitter.com/drkenreed, and twitter.com/DocDead for the show for myself and for Mr. Wayne. You can also find us on Facebook, search for Show Space X, and you'll find us there. Instagram, you can also find us there with VtWShowX. And on Reddit, you can also find us with ShowX. That's reddit.com/r/ShowX. Like, subscribe, and whatever, all of these things, follow, whatever. Do support us that way because those are the things that matter most is our social media gain, and that's how we improve and so on, right? We get more people on board and join our lovely community. If you have done that enough and you think your followers are like sick to death of hearing all that, I don't think they are. But if you think that, then that's fine. What you can do instead to support us is patreon.com/ShowX from a minimum of $1 per month. That's $12 a year. What a subscription service that is. for how many hundreds of hours of content. It's well worth it. So be sure to subscribe on Patreon and help us out. And every little adds up and helps keep our show afloat with hardware and software and such. So that's all very much appreciated, but not as much as the social media stuff. We really need that to grow more than anything. So
all right.
Thank you all for listening in. Very much appreciate it. And thank you for hosting today, sir. And Todd should be back next week. Octail should be back next week. So keep an eye out for that.
Yes. So again, a happy birthday to the Mistress of Giggles and them out about celebrating. Thank you guys for joining us this week. We will catch you again next week. We love having you. See you later, everybody. Bye. Oh, wait. I forgot. I need to hit the drop in for that to actually say bye. I can't just leave it. Here you guys go.
Goodbye. See you next zombie.